Dave, we're going to be talking today about unleashing your inner irresistibility with men. So first of all, before we dive into kind of the meat of this, tell us a little bit about what you mean by this term you've coined, irresistibility. You've kind of broken the word apart into two pieces, and tell us a little bit about your definition of that and what we're going to be talking about today.
Right. So it literally, like anything, it is a skill that can be taught. It's the ability to be irresistible. And you can do that more effectively when you understand more specifically what men are looking for, what makes the difference between a keeper and when he's going to keep away from. And so this is a learnable skill. This is a learnable awareness and I think it makes a tremendous difference. I just got a comment on my page the other day where I share some of this information. I said, oh my gosh, this is really incredible information. It makes it's so much easier to understand. I think the challenge that a lot of ladies have is they talk to their girlfriends, and their girlfriends navigate from their model of the world and what they think is going on. So it's a woman's way of navigating the world placed over top of a man's, which is totally different. And then, hilarity ensues because a lot of times they're very different things. It's like two people talking past one another because they don't understand how the other person navigates the world. Neither one is wrong. Neither one is, neither is better than the other necessarily. They're just different. And so I think when we can enter another person's world and say, oh, that's what you mean. I get that. Oh, okay. Got it. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times we can have those agreements where we can all just get one another. And like I said, it's a learnable skill. So if you have the ability to be irresistible by knowing what men are looking for, and again, what makes the difference between a keeper and when they keep away from, I think it changes everything. It's a total game changer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why we do these kinds of events and these kinds of opportunities for people to have a chance to go deeper and learn more about relationships and dating and these kinds of skills, because they are absolutely learnable skills. And that's why I do my man panel events, to help women to understand that men actually do think differently, they're wired differently, and they navigate the world differently, and how we can create those win-win opportunities in relationships. So I absolutely agree. It's important, and they're learnable skills. So there's this term out there, Dave, that we hear all the time about emotionally unavailable men, right? Don't you hear that all the time, right? Unavailable, emotionally unavailable men. So I want to hear your take on that, because we hear it so often, it comes up so often, and I've wondered, and I want to hear your take. Is this really as prevalent as it seems to be in terms of how often people are talking about it? And is it more common among men than it is women?
I don't think it is entirely. Here's the thing. If someone says, I keep meeting these unavailable men, and again, most of my clients tend to be women. I do have men clients as well, but because we're talking to women today, I'm going from that perspective. My first question is always, interesting. Where are you unavailable? And so I flip it, because like, here's my belief. We attract exactly what we need. There's no kind of, there's nothing tricky about this. So, people who are also themselves unavailable will attract unavailable men, or again, vice versa. The thing that I see all the time is, like, again, it's that fundamental misunderstanding about masculine energy and how they navigate the world. A lot of times they're different spheres of influence. It's either about self, it's about relationships, or it's about work mission. And men's prevalent number one dominant sphere of influence is oftentimes going to be on work mission. It's about making money, being, protector, provider number one. That's how they, basically contribute in the world. It's how they make a difference, how they earn and create value. It's very important. Everyone creates value in some way. Men tend to be more driven by, success and finance, and that feminine energy tends to be more focused on relationship and how they interact with the world, because they're very emotion centered. And so that's just a very different thing. Masculine energy is a little more logical, like, I got to make that money now. I want to be I want to get a promotion. I want to advance in my career. And so it's just a different process. So a lot of times it's a different pace. People are interested in different things later. Like a lot of times it's about, let me get advanced in my career first, and then I'll think about, settling down. Just a different mindset. Whereas the feminine, a lot of times, she's got a window of opportunity, especially if she wants to have a family. And again, sometimes the timing's off. And I think at the end of the day, though, I think if you keep perceiving that people are unavailable, when I do a little digging, I always find out where other people are unavailable also. Sometimes, again, it's about misunderstanding men and how they operate. And taking that personally. I've talked to a lot of really empowered women who are like lit up and just in a great place because they've done their work. Again, my clients, after we've done some work. And, it's funny, they don't really seem to have that problem with unavailable men nearly as much as they used to, because they're switched on and they're showing up differently in the world. And I think that solves a lot of those problems.
So just to recap a little bit, if I understood you correctly, part of what may be causing this perception that a lot of men are unavailable or emotionally unavailable is just that they're engaging in or putting their priorities or emphasis on things like work, like providing, like those things that they've been socialized that are important for them to do, and they're out there competing in the real world in those ways. And because a woman sees them making that a priority, and that seems like that's where his mind and attention and energy is focused, she could possibly interpret that as being emotionally unavailable, when in fact he may not actually be emotionally unavailable. He's just got a different focus right now. So that's part of what I think I heard you say. Does that sound like a correct interpretation?
That is spot on too. Now, that's not to say there aren't men who are emotionally unavailable. There are there, but I'm just saying that women who've done their work and are in a really good place and they're, lit up and engaging and feel good about men, they won't necessarily encounter that quite as much. The thing that changes everything is, even someone who may like I see this all the time with my clients. I suspect you have too. When someone does the work and they just basically like switch on that next level of who they are, they've done their work, they've healed, they know how to connect and communicate. Even when they meet someone who may not even be thinking, I'd really like to settle down this year or next year or whatever. A lot of times when a man meets a woman and he's just like, whoa, who is this? And she gets his attention. He's like, I don't want to lose her, because men are actually very competitive by nature. So when you meet someone who is unlike anyone you ever met, even if you weren't thinking that you want to settle down and have a family, most of the time, the thing that's going to drive him is like, well, I don't want someone else to have her. So he may step up and change. But again, that's predicated on the ladies doing their work and being in a good place. And just basically giving him a good enough reason to change his mind or shift gears or move to another aspect of life. And it's, I think some of the root issue too is ladies sometimes internalize that timing thing and make it personal. Like, he's not ready for this. It must be about me. And no, it's not about you. It's a timing issue. That's not the same thing. They're very different.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I just want to put the accent point on here, Dave, because I think you're bringing up so many really good, important points here, some real gems. And one is I loved what you said earlier when you talked about how when your clients or my clients are coming to us and they're saying, I'm meeting all these unavailable men. And I asked that same question. Is there a way you're showing up in your own life where you're unavailable, or you're unavailable for yourself? So if that is a pattern, one thing is you need to maybe consider doing some work and introspection and see if you're a common denominator here, if some of this has to do with you rather than it's just them. It's like if you've had a pattern where you keep feeling like you're attracting the same person over and over again, that might have something to do with you. We've talked about that topic before.
That is a rich topic we've mined pretty well.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to put the accent point on is something that's come up so often as I've interviewed men over these last few years in these man panels. And that's that when a woman has done her own work and she's lit up with that excitement and that joy and that happiness about her own life, and she's pursuing those things that she's really passionate about, that's one of the things that is incredibly attractive. So that kind of probably leads us into this whole irresistibility topic even deeper.
Exactly right. Yeah, I love the way you kind of drilled that down and summarized it nicely. And I think it's also about coming from a place of abundance. Like, when I said that issue about, sometimes a lady might take it personally if a man's not in a place where he's ready to move into that next phase of his life, for whatever it is. When you're in abundance, when you realize that you can go out there and you can create the life and the love that you want because you know who you are and you're lit up from within, you're not going to focus on, no, I got to get that one. You just don't think about it. You don't, make it about yourself. You don't make it about them. You just show up in your brilliance, and men see it and they're like, oh, I'm going to have to up my game to get someone like her because she's incredible. And I believe that everyone listening to us today has their own, inner irresistibility, their ability to be irresistible, to be incredible, to be lit up from within. And so I believe everyone has it. And, sometimes the ladies, especially the ones who read the magazines at the checkout counter, they'll think that it's about beauty. It's about, weight. It's about this. It's about, skin care or whatever, all these things
right.
that the media sells us on and makes us feel not enough about. And there's a man out there who's going to love and adore you just the way you are. No changes necessary, but you have to be okay with it first. Like that's the big leap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is so important too. You're just saying gem after gem here, Dave. You're on a roll. I just want to say, I think this scarcity, you talked about the abundance mentality, and of course the opposite of that is the scarcity mentality. I think this scarcity mentality about there being enough men or high quality men or available men out there is very prevalent in the world. And, I was a single woman well into my 40s. I married for the first time at 43. And I can remember being out with groups of women, and we would have these depressing conversations at times before I learned to rise above that about how all the good ones were taken, or all the good ones were married or in a relationship or gay or whatever. And there was no one available for us, and blah, 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 wine, have some wine with our cheese. And that was not productive in any way. We all went away from that feeling depressed, and it was like another confirmation that, oh boy, there's no one out there for us. Now, gratefully, I learned to move through that and past that, and that eventually didn't participate in those sessions. But I think those beliefs, whether it's in a group of women or just individual women, about the scarcity is pretty prevalent out there.
Absolutely.
And so what ideas do you have to shift that into the more abundant mentality? Because I think that could be helpful for women listening, especially those that might be feeling like, well, it's nice for you too to be saying that, but it's not what I'm experiencing, or it's not what I feel like I'm experiencing right now.
Right. Literally, as I was listening, I've heard those conversations too. Like occasionally I'll take my laptop and go work at a coffee shop, right? And I'll hear, ladies getting together and having those conversations much like you described. And it actually kind of disappoints me and hurts me for them, because like that kind of fear and scarcity type thinking is literally a communicable dis-ease. Like they're communicating it from one another, and it creates this dis-ease. It creates this fear, this anxiety, this FOMO, fear of missing out. Like there's not going to be enough. Like they're all taken, they're all gone. What's wrong with me? And I think that's just
it's too late. I missed my chance. Yeah.
Right. It's such nonsense. And I think whatever you focus on, like if you have it's like anything, if you have a steady diet of something that's no good for you, it's obviously going to show up in some way that's not going to be good for you. And so I think maybe the best way, maybe to counteract that is, attend events like this, listen to these, great speakers that you've got as part of your Ready for the Right Guy thing, and just focus on it. When you hear yourself, either start to say it to a girlfriend or start to say it to yourself even more critically, like, wait a minute, check that. Is that true? Like, where do I get that belief that all the good ones are taken? Where does that come from? What is that? Whose voice is that? What's the meaning? Why am I entertaining that? Not only entertaining it, why am I representing that again and again? Does that bring out the best in me, or does it bring out something less in me? And if the answer is it's bringing out something less in you, you got to change it, and I'm not affirmations are good, but I also like asking the questions too. Like, of course there are plenty of men. Like I'm a great woman. There's plenty of men who would be interested in what I bring to the table, and that it's getting really clear on that, and knowing that you bring value. Not you can choose to focus on what's great about you, or what you're afraid of, and whichever one you focus on what you're afraid of, this goes away. And so it's choose your focus, ask a better question: what's the truth? And the truth is, you're more than enough. Again, if you listen to this event and the Irresistibility product, and again, you've got all these great speakers who are offering amazing content. We need to check our own limiting beliefs and self-doubts and insecurities, and that's the stuff that's really toxic and gets in the way of true partnership.
Yeah, and our minds are so incredibly powerful. So when we're focusing on those lack or fear or scarcity kinds of thoughts, rather than thoughts of faith and hope and creation, then we can get ourselves into a place where self-sabotage begins to happen, where we don't even see the opportunities if they're right in front of us. And so it's so powerful. And as you were speaking, I had this little flashback of a conversation I had with a client a few years back, and we'd been coaching together for a while, and she'd met someone really wonderful. We'd moved her through this process and helped her create opportunities, and she'd met this wonderful guy, and things were going really well, and she was almost like waiting for the other shoe to drop. She was like almost anticipating that something would go wrong. And one day in one of our sessions, she said something to me like, well, what if I continue to fall in love with him and get more and more involved, and then everything goes worse than I could have ever imagined? Wow. That was the question. So, the fear thoughts were coming up based on some things she'd experienced in the past and things like that. And I just said, what if things go better than you could ever imagine? What if things continue to proceed and keep going the way they're going, and things turn out even better than you could have imagined? And she wrote me via email. They've now been married for like 3 or 4 years, and she lives over in London. And she wrote me and she said that one little question, like that one little reframe, like shifted my thinking into a place of abundance and possibility thinking, and away from the fearful thinking. And she said, had I not shifted that, I probably would have sabotaged this now wonderful relationship that I had. So that just shows the power of what you're talking about, on how just shifting the way you're looking at something and shifting where your focus is can make such a huge difference.
Exactly. I love that you were sharing that. I had the very, very similar situation with a client this week. I've been working with her for a little while. And she told me, like, she's got this guy who has approached her. She's known him for a while, and he had just confessed was it like 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. He just confessed 2 weeks ago that he really wanted to commit to her because he's been watching her for a while. He was doing his own work, and he wanted to step up into a way better version of himself because he saw such value in her. And as welcome as that was, and as wonderful as it was for her, she really wanted that experience. She started to pull back, and she started to listen to those limiting beliefs in her head. She's like, I'm not talking to him enough, or having enough contact with him. She had seen him. They'd been together for like, I think, a week and a half or something. She'd seen him 5 times, but she was thinking, oh, I can't connect with him as much. And like, she wanted to pull back. She's like, I'm going to tell him I can't do this. I'm like, no. There's a time to lean in. There's a time to pull back. Do not pull back. You lean in. You ask for what you want, not as a complaint, not as a demand, but you make a request. And she had the conversation. They went out and they had a beautiful date. She shared what she wanted. He's like, of course. This is just, it's a negotiation. It's a win-win. That's what you need. Fine. You let me know what you need. We'll find a way to work it out that works for both of us. And she's really happy. Like, she literally just had this experience this week, and left her own devices. She was about to pull back and sabotage it all, as she's done before. But because we had that conversation, I said, no, you're not pulling back. You're leaning in. and she did it, and it worked beautifully. So I'm really excited for her. I feel like there are good things ahead because both of these people, I happen to know him a little bit. They have done their work, and I'm just excited for them because they're both in a really good place, and they're doing the work, and they're really consciously choosing this. You know, like I said, occasionally the old stuff shows up, but hopefully she'll call me before it does. So,
Right.
we were able to
Right.
talk her off that ledge. That worked out great.
Right. Yeah. And I love that story. And I love that you encouraged her to lean into it, because it's the only way we find out whether or not someone that we're considering going deeper with into partnership is able to provide and is able to meet some of our needs, or at least is willing to want to try to work with us and to create that beautiful partnership. And so often we create the fear in our minds and in our head before we even give this other person a chance. And so like that leaning into it does take a certain amount of faith and courage, because there is a risk that maybe they won't be able to provide that, or they won't be willing to provide that, or that they don't want to go the same place. But it's so much better to find out and to be willing to ask for what you want. And I like how you phrase it in terms of a request, not a demand, not a not something that sounds like a demand or a command, but a request.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm sure that you would agree. Isn't that just the most satisfying for us, for what we do? When you see someone who is just about to, pull back and sabotage, but yet they find another gear, another level, and they lean in and they get rewarded, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's awesome. It's just so satisfying.
It is. You're so right, Dave. And you know what? I think that's one of the advantages, one of the many advantages of having a coach, because as you know, many times people come to us when they're wanting to meet someone, they're wanting to find someone, and that often is the gateway. But as you also know, that's only the beginning once you meet someone. And so having someone to support you, not only through helping you meet someone and attract someone, but navigating those stages of a relationship, especially those early stages, which can feel kind of scary, where you might have that natural tendency to want to retract or pull back because you have been hurt or disappointed before, can be so incredibly valuable. We've just given 2 examples here where without our support, our clients may have pulled back and retracted from what could have the potential of being an amazing, wonderful relationship for them.
Absolutely. I totally believe it and see it all the time. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's great. Okay, so our time has been going so fast because I love talking to you so much, but what do you think? This is a question that women ask all the time. I'm shifting gears a little bit here.
Okay.
I see videos and I see titles out there of articles, and I'm sure you do too, where it talks about how to get a man to commit, or how to get a man to do this or that, or how to make a man fall in love with you, or that kind of thing. And I honestly, Dave, have a little bit of a problem with that, because I don't think we make anybody do anything, and I don't think we really want to make anybody do anything if we're coming from a really healthy place, right?
Absolutely.
But I want to ask it this way then. What do you think inspires a man to want to commit to a woman?
That is a much better reframe on that, because the in spirit. So that's when spirit is leading, and that's when it's really a conscious, coupling, if you will. I think that's fantastic. And it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, that whole thing where you lean in or lean back, pull back, I guess. Like, here's a good example of lean in. Lean in is do the work to know your value. Lean in is do the work to make a request rather than demand. Lean in as to do the work to heal any unresolved wounds as you understand them or as they come up, as you develop a new awareness of them. Again, another reason why coaches are so great, because they can see you doing what you do, that you might miss it. Leaning back is a great example there, is like being unattached to the outcome, like just showing up as the amazing goddess you are, and then letting men interact and meet her. And if you're not into that whole, like, how do you get a man to commit? How do you get leverage or control the situation? Ladies, here's a little secret for you. I don't know very many men who like to be controlled. In fact, it's just the grossest energy in the world. We hate it. We will buck against it. And it will be the first thing that sends us, running in the opposite direction. And at some level, if you ask the question, how do I get a man to commit? What you're saying is, how do I control a man? How do I take away his will? How do I make him do what I want him to do? And truth be told, if you really could make a man do everything you want him to do when you want him to do it, you would actually think he's a disgusting wimp, because you're controlling him and he's not strong enough to be your man, your rock, who's got you through thick and thin, who can stand there like in the breach. If you're going through a really tough time for some reason, he can just be a rock. And he's like, oh, babe, I'm sorry. Come here, I got you. And he's not going to run, and those are the times when I it seems compelling to say, oh, I want my man to do what I want. But I had this conversation today with a client, they ended up breaking up because she couldn't get him, to do some of the things that she wanted that are foundational. But in the couple of days since they've broken up, she's now doing this process where she's going in and saying, what was my role in that? And I totally applaud that courage of her to go in there. And now she's actually starting to see, like, oh, wait a minute. There were some places where I didn't exactly set him up to win. And she's trying to, she's smart. And so she has certain little tools in her toolbox. She knows how to manipulate and get her way. And she's realizing that I did that. And I'm not really setting him up to win, to be my man, And in the same conversation, do you really want to control a man, have him do everything you want? Because you can't respect him. You can't really, because at some level you really control him.
And that's so key, because one thing that I think you'll probably agree with me on is that for a woman, now I'm speaking from the woman's point of view, but for a woman to fall in love, and especially to stay in love with a man, she needs to be able to respect him. What I find is that if the respect goes out the window, the loving feelings often go out the window, right, along with it. Absolutely. And so you're absolutely right. If you were with a man that you could control, you wouldn't respect him. You really wouldn't love him. You wouldn't really have what you wanted anyway. So I call those kind of headlines clickbait, because they definitely capture women's attention. But I always cringe sometimes when I read them, how to make a man do this, or how to make a man do that, or how to, get a man to fall madly in love with you. It's like if we're phrasing them in those ways, it sounds like there's a certain amount of control, like a woman's going to control a man. And I just don't like that, because I believe that a healthy relationship is based on two people coming together out of their free will and choice, because they feel inspired to do so because of the respect and love and appreciation and attraction that they have with that other person.
And to tie on to what you said from the man's point of view, if you believe at some level, if you know that you're able to, say, manipulate your guy or get him to do what you want him to do because you kind of know how to work him, if you'll start to not respect him. And the saddest thing of all maybe is he stops respecting himself. And again, it's this whole corrosive thing. Like, he knows he's being pushed around. He knows he's being led around. He knows he's caving in. He doesn't feel the center. He doesn't feel like he's able to effectively, be a leader or be a strong, centered, grounded man who is there to be a rock. Again, all the things that I think ladies probably want and aspire to have, but sometimes unwittingly, because they're buying into these articles, the same ones you're talking about, the clickbait, how to get a man to do this, like, you don't want that. And so it's a little bit of tricky thing sometimes, of understanding, like, what do you want, what do you really want, and what gets in the way of you having that. So it's a bit of a deep dive, and again, sometimes you're too into it, you can't see it. You need to have that in the breach of breaking up and taking some time off and to reconsider how she's showing up. She now sees it, and she's sitting and processing it, and she's like, ooh, maybe I didn't exactly set him up to win. And there were some powerful things that she was able to realize, as she's processing it. So I think that's really, well, I'm sorry I took a breakup to see it, is also really, really healthy and profound.
Yeah, and I think the key there too is when a woman, this is something for women to remember, when you do set a man up to win by the way that you request things, or by the way that you help him to know how to win with you, you really create that win-win scenario, because you get typically more of your wants and needs satisfied, but he also gets the satisfaction of knowing that he's appreciated, that he's bringing something of value to you, that he's adding to your life. And he gets that satisfaction of feeling that respect and that admiration and appreciation. And it's that win-win scenario. And so, sometimes, and I'm sure you've heard this too, it's like, I'll have women say, well, why do we women have to be doing all the work? Why do we have to be doing all this and catering to a man? Occasionally I'll get those kind of comments that will come in when I run these kind of events or post a video on YouTube or that sort of thing. And it's really not about you doing all of the work. It's about you creating more of what you want in your life and creating a win-win scenario where you can both enjoy and maximize the opportunity that can come from a loving partnership relationship. And that doesn't take responsibility away from a man from doing his part. It's just that there are some things that we can do and some skills that we can develop as women that can help facilitate that and help create that dynamic between a man and a woman.
Right. This may not earn me a lot of points, but I would say that if you find yourself in a position like that where you're being forced to do all the work and you're not why am I doing this? I'm not getting anything out of it. I would have to say, by definition, you're not knowing your value.
Mm-hmm.
You're in some sort of a position that you don't want to be in, that you're in under duress, essentially. And you're out of it enough to know that's not what I want or aspire to have, but you're too in it to say, you have a choice. You don't have to be. No one is looking for someone who's subservient. No one's really looking for that. This is really about a conscious partnership of two people who are both bringing important and valuable, critical things to the relationship, and taking turns, looking after and caring for one another from a beautiful, conscious place. If you've done the work, if I believe if you find yourself in a situation that you feel totally subservient, by definition, you can't possibly know your value. So you settled for a bad deal because you didn't negotiate it effectively. Maybe you didn't even know that was an option. I'm here to tell you, it's always been an option. Just because you didn't know it, it doesn't mean it wasn't available. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Well, yeah, it's true. And if you're starting to feel that energy, you're probably overgiving, and that's based in you not knowing your value. You're over functioning or over delivering. And when women make that comment to me, it's usually in the context of there's all these events like this for women, but where are all these events for men? Why aren't men doing this work? Well, I think there are men doing this work. I think there are men that are absolutely committed to growing. They don't always meet in groups or do some of the things that we do, but I think there absolutely are men that are committed to their own self-growth and development. I'm married to one, you're one. I mean, there are men out there who are doing it. They just may not be doing it in the same way.
Right. And again, that's a difference of, masculine and feminine, how they show up and navigate the world differently. Mm-hmm. They are absolutely bringing great things to their relationships too. They just do it in a different way, different values, different preferences, different timing. Sometimes, as I said earlier, they might do it a little bit later. They might not be doing it at this moment, but what if they get in a group 5 years from now because their life's conditions have changed and now that's more of a priority for them because they've handled the corporate thing or the job thing or the finance piece or whatever,
Dave, can I ask you one last question before we wrap up?
Sure, absolutely.
So since so many women here are wanting to meet, attract, and have a relationship with the right guy for them, what are a few tips or guidelines you would give women as to how they know whether or not they've met the right guy?
Oh, man. So really the way I look at it, it's really about, there's a lot of great people out there, but sometimes they might not be great people for you. And so the key is, do you have enough of the most important values in alignment? Or are they complementary? They don't have to be identical, but they have to be complementary. They have to be workable together. And so, interesting. I don't know if you all remember, several years ago, Kim Kardashian was in in a marriage, and it lasted 72 days. It was a basketball player. I don't even remember his name off the top of my head. Lasted 72 days, and I got a call from a local Fox affiliate. And they asked me to come on and talk about that because they thought it was newsworthy. And my position at that time was like, I don't know these people. I really can't pontificate on the inner workings of their relationship and what happened and didn't. But what I can do is turn this into a teachable moment. So I created what I called the always formula. And it's basically, I unpacked it, created an acronym because I like to unpack a lot of different information in it. And I talked about, some of the most important values that you want to make sure are in alignment. Like the A is about, aspirations and dreams. Do you want similar things in life? Or, links to family. How close are you to your family? How maybe some people are really close, some people are disconnected, maybe some of it. There's about lifestyle and health. Can a gym junkie and a junk food junkie coexist and be workable long term? It's going to create some challenges, right? Because they see the world very different ways. And there's just a bunch of others. Some of the others are like, wealth and finance. Can a spender and a saver coexist? It's going to obviously cause pressure because they're going to see the world very differently. And then there's other things about, always faithful. Does one person want to be, part of a throuple or something? Or does one person believe, hey, this is you and me together for a lifetime? These are important distinctions that you want to get really clear on. Is cheating a deal breaker? Or am I open to other things? There's all kinds of situations out there. Some work if other people are into it. Possibly. But I think it's just one of those things that have to be disclosed up front, and two people have to be on the same page about it. And youth and children, do you want kids? How many? Private school, public school? What's that look like? And then the last one is about, spirituality, faith. How important is that to you? Is one agnostic and is one, want to be in church all day or in synagogue or whatever, practicing their faith in some way, or maybe it's meditation or spirituality in some way. These are just sort of, I would call, pillars in life. And can people find enough that's complementary and respect one another's positions on some of these key areas? If you only made it 72 days, I'm thinking there's probably some of those things that were way out of whack, way out of alignment, and they're just not workable ultimately.
Yeah, I think we're talking in part here, shared values. Really having some shared values, or at least, as you said, complementary values, because those things are definitely going to cause conflict if they're out of alignment. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's important for people to take the time to really get to know someone well enough and to know yourself well enough to know the things that are really important to you. And I think that was a really good answer to that question. So thanks for letting me add one on here on the end. And Dave, thank you so much for sharing so generously and for what was a very great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Always is. Thank you.
Thank you. And ladies, be sure to join us for more. So glad you're here. Bye for now.